See, the average person thinks they're going to go into a dark hole and never come out.
Yeah.
It's going to be like a black hole.
Yeah.
Sucks you in and you never get out
Yeah.
of it, right? It's not going to be like that. But this is some of the fundamental false beliefs we have about emotion. And they're completely false. If you deal with your bad emotions, your sad emotions, your hard emotions, the dark emotions as people call them, you'll find afterwards you'll be lighter. You'll be free. The average person doesn't believe that.
Yeah, and what I can also see is that sometimes I start with the process and then I get out of it because I'm like, no way, I'm not going
there.
It's like I'm rather die actually.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people die like that. Yeah.
And even while I'm feeling it, it's like I want to die.
Yeah.
It's so horrible.
So you can even go through the feeling that you want to die without dying.
Yeah.
And come out the other end of that. I've done that.
Yeah.
There are many times in my life, and particularly the time that I went through the actual emotion. I felt like I wanted to die, and I couldn't think of anything better.
Yeah.
And come out of it after going through grief and a lot of other feelings, and I don't even know what that feeling feels like anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can go through an emotion and come out of it and be better off for it.
Yeah.
Again, most of us have the false belief that's not possible. But that's only a false belief. It's not true. It's a sin to keep that false belief. It's going to cause you damage in your life. And it already is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You get to a stage at some point where you start feeling that you can't even handle your own feelings, even though they're inside you.
Yeah.
How debilitating is that? That there's feelings inside of you and you feel you can't even handle them. Like, that's like a very weak place to feel that you can't handle them. Like, unfortunately, many of us have been taught that, but it's very untrue. God created you, the pinnacle of His creation. You can handle any emotion. Every emotion that's even possible to have, you can handle. Rejection, condemnation, ridicule, all these negative emotions, sadness, grief, distraught, terror, rage. Every single one of them you can handle. Right? You've been designed to handle it. You've been designed to have them, even. As you release them, as I said, the ones that are loving will remain. And therefore the ones that cause happiness will remain, and the ones that cause unhappiness will leave you. Yeah. That's a fundamental truth to understand about the human soul. It's a fundamental truth that God's trying to help each one of you understand on a personal experience level. Not just be told it, but to actually have it. You can't just be told these things. You're going to have to go through them and have them and understand it by having them. Yeah. But you can handle everything. God designed you to handle everything. The irony is, once you feel that you can handle everything, often there's less hardship for you to handle. The way the law of attraction works is every time you believe a false thing, the law of attraction must bring you an example of that false thing in order for you to deal with the false thing. So the less false things you believe, the less false things will happen to you. Yeah? But most of us don't think that way. We think the opposite. We think just by thinking about it, we're attracting it. So often thinking quite different.
Thank you very much.
I just had a question that sort of followed on from Helena's example and what you were talking about with false beliefs and fears and how to actually make them not here but here, actually, that to know how to know that they're actually wrong and that I'm not right, and keep living in
Yeah, to actually feel in your heart are false.
Yeah,
to
I
me.
want to change it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, nothing can exist in your heart, because remember, your heart is really saying in your soul, your true self. So nothing can exist in your heart when the opposite exists in your heart. So you have to first release the opposing force before the truth can enter. And this is something you want to resist. So Simon, ever since I've known you, you want to sort of skip over the opposite that exists in your heart. You want to embrace the new without having to go through the pain of releasing the old.
I do.
Yeah? That is not possible in any universe. Even after you die, that's not going to be possible. You can't embrace a new thought or a new feeling without the old feeling that opposes it leaving you. So this is a fundamental truth to come to embrace for yourself, right? So what I see is happening for you a lot is that you have the capacity to work through some of these false beliefs emotionally, but you have one false belief that's really dominating your entire existence, and that is that you should not have to go through the pain and suffering relating to a false belief. You understand what I just meant by that? If the feeling you have is, I shouldn't have to go through that pain. If God loved me and if everything was loving, I should not have to go through that pain. But there's a very strong reason why you must go through the pain. The pain is an opposing belief to what is truth. So while the pain exists within you, it's impossible for you to, in your soul, absorb the truth related to the pain. Makes sense?
Yeah. So if I have a feeling that I feel like that, is that an entitlement? I shouldn't have to go through.
Yes, an entitlement, but it's based around some fears you have of, if you go into it, you'll never come out of it. So it's not, even that's a false belief, right? And that false belief has to be challenged. Now, how does God challenge that false belief? If you could just skip around all of the bad emotion or the sad emotions or the painful emotions, let's call them, that are inside of you, and you could just skip around them and be happy afterwards, how does that teach you that actually there is a truth, and that is, while the false belief is in you, no true belief or happiness can come about unless that false belief leaves you. How does God address that falsehood without you going through the pain of the false belief, and afterwards knowing you can handle it?
Would God bring me more things to show me, or?
I'm just saying, no, God's definitely going to do that. But what I'm saying is, if you sort of misinterpreted my statement, so let's just be more clear. So if I have, so here's Mon's soul, right? So you're half of the soul, and inside of your soul there is this, let's call it a false belief. So I'm going to make it a red thing inside your soul. So false belief inside your soul. This false belief has its effects. Does that make sense? It has, in your day-to-day life, it's having effect all the time. Day-to-day life, you're being affected by this false belief, right? So the false belief is affecting everything you choose to do, everything you choose to say, all sorts of things, right? So there's this false belief there. Now, this false belief happens to be contrary to God's truth. So here's God's truth in blue. God's truth is all emotion must be felt. That's one of God's fundamental truths about the human soul. He created you to experience emotion. All emotion must be felt. Make sense?
Yeah.
What does Mon's false belief say?
I want things to be easy.
Also, I only want to feel the happy emotions. I don't want to have to feel anything other than a happy emotion. Right? I only want to have a certain group of emotions. That's all I want. That's your belief. That's false. How does God educate you about the truth under those circumstances? Can you see that your false belief, this panic and terror, and because you are panicked and terrified when you even contemplate it, right? Letting it, even feeling it.
Being myself. It's
Yeah.
being myself.
Yeah. So you're panicked and terrified. How does God help you go through that? He's going to have to bring you a situation through the attraction, law of attraction. He's going to have to bring you a situation that causes you to feel an overpowering emotion. And it's going to have to be a bad one. Because otherwise you'll never change this belief. Right? That belief has to leave you, and it's not going to leave you until you go through the experience of leaving you. Now, once the emotion, you're relieved from it, now that false belief becomes yours. The truth becomes yours. Before then, the false belief was yours. So while the false belief exists in your soul, you're going to be convinced that it's true. And anything being presented to you by anybody, it doesn't matter whether it's Jesus or Muhammad or God even, or the nicest spirit you could ever meet, or the nastiest person, whatever they say to you, you're not going to believe it, even if it's true, while that false belief exists. You're just going to stay in the false belief. The only way that false belief can change is for it to leave you, and the only way it can leave you is by you having the pain of it fully.
I must want to go through the pain of it fully.
Yeah. Not for the sake because you're narcissistic and masochistic. Sorry,
Yeah.
Not because of that reason, but because you know it's gonna. You have some trust that it's going to be good afterwards. Yeah? Now, once that false belief, that red dot, you could say, leaves you, now the blue dot can enter you. And you'll be convinced after that, anytime I've got a problem, I just need to feel it. Oh, I can handle it. You'll be convinced you can handle it. And somebody can come along and tell you, you don't have to go through that, and you say, no, I do. And I am. You know? When I started processing my emotions, which was in my early 30s, every single person around me told me I didn't have to do it. Without exception. As soon as I did it once, I knew I had to. And it didn't matter what you told me. You could be, I went to a psychologist, he told me. I went to a psychiatrist, he told me. Didn't have to do it. Anybody I went to, I got professional assistance. And everyone told me I didn't have to do it. Not a single person, my own family, not a single person told me that I could do it. They all told me I shouldn't have to. But once I did it, myself once, I'm going, you can tell me whatever you like, I know it works. That's the only way I could become convinced, going through some bad things, coming out the other end of it, with my skin still intact, my mind still intact, my reasoning still intact, in fact, not only still intact, but actually 100 times better than I was before. Before I could hardly contemplate anything, emotionally in particular. I could hardly work out anything. Now I can even work out other people's feelings, let alone my own. Right? So, huge improvements. Once you have that experience, you're going to be convinced. But it's only when you have that experience. So the experience you're putting off, Molly, is the experience you have to have. And the only way God can educate you is for you to have that experience. There's no alternative. There's no running around it. There's no, skirting the situation, manipulating it, getting angry about it. None of that's going to help you. There's no relationshiping yourself out of it. There's no sexualizing yourself out of it. There's no fooding yourself out of it. There's no drugging yourself out of it. You're going to have to go through it sooner or later.
You listed all my top 4
It's most of these top
And there's no spiritualising yourself out of it either, by the way. Yeah, top 5. So you're just going to have to go ahead and do it. Now, we become very adept when we're in avoidance of working out all sorts of what seem to be on the outward appearance effective ways of getting rid of the problem. But the problem still exists, right? You're still just as terrified of your emotions today as when I met you.
Yeah, pretty stuck and
Yeah.
pretty stoic and
pretty terrified.
pained. Yeah.
Yeah.
And pained.
Yeah.
Not
And you
nice.
still do the same things you did back then that you do now, trying to avoid it, attacking others and wanting power and wanting control and all those things. You still do those things. All those things will have an opportunity of disappearing once you release the false belief. But while the false belief exists, it's telling you you've got to do those things. You've got to do those things.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, what I said before was, God must, if He loved you, He must confront you with this. He must confront your false belief that you can avoid emotion. If it's painful, He's got to confront you with it. Now, whether He confronts you with it now or in 100 years from now is really up to you, not Him, because He's trying to confront you with it right now. He's been trying to confront you with it for years, ever since you were born, almost. He's been trying to confront you with it, right? So the law has to bring you these events that are going to trigger these emotions. It has to. The key is, are you going to fight harder and keep the red dot? Or are you going to release the red dot, just surrender and release the red dot? That's the real decision. And that's really the only decision that can be made. Do you surrender and release the red dot, or do you just fight harder and keep it there and make it worse? Because every time you fight it, it's going to get worse. Yeah.
So going through the anger, the fear.
Yeah, and that's all a part of feeling a difficult emotion. There'll be, it's like any process of grieving. They tell you any process of grieving, there's a lot of anger in it, isn't there, in the beginning, and then you eventually get into your terror and your fear about it, and then eventually you get into your grief, and then there's the healing process that occurs after then, right? This is a well-known fact in psychology, is it not? Yeah, when people die, they say this is the thing you go through, you have anger, and then you get to your fears, and then you get to your sadness and your grief, and then you release it, and then you have acceptance. That's what they tell you. And it's a well-known thing that that's what happens to people, and yet the whole world's fighting still, even though it's a well-known thing.
I've been through the anger so many times.
You have?
It doesn't get anywhere.
That's right. The purpose of the anger is to avoid, right? And you learn that after a while. And you go, okay, the anger is a sin. So I've got to stop doing that, and I've got to start, and my addictions to get away from it are sins, so I've got to stop doing that. And my fear I can feel, and I can feel it. I can go through it. I'm able to. God created me able to. Right? Once I go through the process and I actually have gone through it emotionally, then I'll be convinced. But only then. And once you've done that once, you can do it with everything then. You won't avoid the process anymore.
So I'll still be in power and control and all the favourites until I go through that.
Yep. And then you go, like, oh, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear that I can get over those things and still not go through it, but that's not true. It's never going to be true. And God knows that. That's why God's continually confronting you with the problem through attraction, continually confronting you with the problem. And in a way, in some ways, you know that, because otherwise you wouldn't be here listening. Right? You know it, but and this is a trouble for many of us. We know some things in terms of intellectually know, but we're still terrified of doing it. Yeah. And the key is to just learn how to feel terror, because that's something I had to learn how to feel.
I was listening to you say, it's been you used to have like your breakfast and then spend 5 hours going through your terror and shaking and stuff.
Yeah.
Spending time every day.
Yeah.
Feeling your fear, your terror.
Yeah. And I had a lot more terror in me than you've got in you.
Mm.
And that's why I had to do it for so long.
Yeah.
All of the 14 are going to have a lot more terror than you.
Mm.
And that's why they'll have to do it for some time. So it's not, it's not something that you are able to avoid, and it's not something in the end you'll want to. Because the trouble with terror is while it's in you, it's a terrible feeling that stays in you, and it pervades everything you do.
Yeah.
Once it's gone from you, I don't know, it's hard for me to describe the difference between what I was when I was 30 compared to what I am now. Like I was a terrified bundle of energy in my early 30s, and I was running around like a uncontrolled maniac, putting out all the things, fires of all the things I was terrified of. That's what dominated my whole life.
You live in worry.
I worried every day, all night. I used to wake up in the morning worried. I'd wake up in the morning with the feeling of dread every morning. Like dread, like I'd wake up with my heart, racing, dread for the day. It was terrible.
So how did you go through that fucking fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, how the fuck did you get from
By feeling how terrified by softening to it.
softening?
Yeah. You're very angry about the terror.
Yeah.
And that causes you to not be soft to it. I've learnt to be soft to my terror. Yeah?
Yeah.
And the more soft I am to my terror, the faster I progress. I've learnt that. So now I don't condemn myself for my terror. I don't think it's weak to have my terror. I don't condemn myself for the terror. I don't attack myself for having terror. I don't let other people attack me for having terror. I don't put myself in a situation where people are able to attack me when I have my terror. I make sure that if I'm having my terror and everyone around me is going to be afraid of it, then I don't want to spend any time with them while I'm having my terror. I make sure that I'm alone when I'm having my terror so that other people are not affecting me by their terror of my terror. So there's a whole heap of things that I do to let myself have my terror. But I've learned to have it, and I learned every terror I release, I feel relieved. More relieved. I've still got terrors now, and I'm in the process of relieving them still. Yeah.
You knew that it would be a good idea to do it.
I wouldn't say I knew at the beginning. No, but I was convinced that I had to do something because nothing I was doing up to then was working. Like I said, I was 30, 33. Waking up every morning in total dread of my life. That's pretty bad being so young and yet waking up in dread of my life every single day. It was terrible. So at the end I thought, either I'm going to have this dread for the rest of my life and I'm going to wake up in terror for the rest of my life, or I'm going to have to do something about it. And nobody came up with any logical explanation of how I was going to release it. So I decided, I've just got to go through it. After I went through it, I became convinced, but not before. Before it was just like an experiment. I'm going to experiment with this because nothing else has worked. Does that make sense? But in the process of going through it, yes, now I've become convinced. So convinced, and of course as time goes on, you become convinced, but also God's truth comes to you now. Because remember, while this error exists, God's truth can't come. But when the error is released, God's truth can now come. And now that God's truth has come, I'm certain all of you are going to have to do that. I'm certain that all of you are going to find it hard. I'm certain also that all of you are going to find it afterwards a lot better. Yeah. And my conviction comes from my personal experience and also from the fact that God agrees. I now know God agrees, but I didn't know that then. I now know that God was trying to tell me that then, but I wasn't listening, just like most of us aren't, right? Yeah. So you'll go through, when you let yourself go through that, surrender to that. So it's about surrendering. It's about letting go. It's about, I used to liken it to people like, imagine, for most of us, you imagine you're a juggler. And you've got 8 balls, approval of others, feeling good about myself, control, keep them all in the air, right? Mm-hmm. There's all these, and you could liken them all to emotional balls. You're just trying to keep them in the air. And imagine there's a guy at the other end of the room, you're juggling, and there's a guy at the other end of the room who's going to shoot you if you drop something. That's how you feel.
You mean in terror or just day to day?
Yeah, you're terrified that if you drop one of these balls, you drop all these balls that you're juggling in your day-to-day life, that it's a life and death situation. You're going to die from dropping the balls. That's what you believe. You understand? You believe that keeping the balls in the air is the only thing keeping you alive. That's how strong the false belief is. The easiest way to test that belief and to go through the fear is drop the balls and let yourself potentially be shot. Of course, the shooting never happens because you just believe it's going to, right? You believe you're going to die from dropping everything. But it's not the way it works. You drop everything, you go through the emotion, like this is how you drop everything, by going through the emotion. Drop everything. By dropping everything, you come out the other end and go, really, I needed to drop that a lot sooner. Yeah? And that's the only thing you become convinced of, that you should have done it earlier. Yeah? So that's what I'd encourage you to do. It's going to change your life, but at the moment, there's obviously some attraction to truth, otherwise you wouldn't even want to hear this, right? So there's some attraction to truth, but there's a very deep, strong resistance in you towards doing it. And that's indicative of the level of terror associated with doing it, right?
I'm still attracted. I'm still attracted to anything that makes sense. I don't know, anything that makes sense.
That's the wonderful thing about truth, it's very logical. Even though unpalatable.
Tell me about it, I'm hiding from you the whole day. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, often I feel a person who's worried, often hides from us, Mary and myself, and particularly me, they're hiding from me all the time. They don't want to hear a truth, but honestly, it's a lot better knowing the truth than not, and it's a lot better going through terror than it is holding it inside. That's what I've learned. Holding terror inside was like this constant dread every single day. It just went on and on and on and on every day. Very uncomfortable. It was a lot less uncomfortable going through it. It only took for my terror, the main terrors that were stopping me from feeling emotion, they only took 3 months. And then I just started feeling emotional all the time, which was great. Now, up until the time that occurred, I was in dread every single day. After that, I never had a feeling of dread again. So I woke up every day after that with a more feeling of positivity. The feeling that things were going to work out. The feeling that I'd progress. The feeling that I could make changes. I didn't have any of those feelings before then. So, and my experience is the same as every single spirit who's ever existed experience in the spirit world. Yep. Right from a mon and a man, right from them. They arrived in the spirit world with terrors. Yep. And they had to feel them in order to progress. Not only that, they had a lot of guilt because they were they were the first persons to make some bad choices, and there was a lot of consequences. Yeah. A lot of flow-on effects for their children and everything they had to feel about as well. Lots to feel, but they felt it all, you know. Every single person since then's had to do it. So the best thing to do is get on with it. Get on with it, don't put it off. Don't keep putting it off. I know it's very tempting to keep putting it off, but... And if you feel there's no fear in you to feel, then you're in complete delusion. Because everybody on earth who's ever had a life on earth has something to feel. And the harsher the childhood, the worse. So many of you have a certain level of terror, but it's not as bad as many of the people who are in third world countries have to feel. Because I've had a lot more violent upbringings many times, a lot more violence around them sometimes, and a lot more difficulties where their life was threatened a lot, just even through malnutrition and other things like that. So they have terror too, you know. How can you expect them to go through theirs if you haven't gone through yours? So that's another thing that used to play on my mind a bit. How could I expect my children, my family, my parents and everybody to go through theirs if I haven't dealt with mine, you know? Very hypocritical of me to expect other people to not act in their terror while I'm acting in mine. Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense to, even on that basis, just to release it. What's the time, guys?